Pearson correlation coefficient in studying the meaning of a literary text, prepared by Oksana Melnychuk, Ivan Bekhta, and Mariia Tkachivska from Lviv Polytechnic National University and Vasyl Stefanyk Precarpathian National University. This research constitutes the engagement of Pearson correlation coefficient in studying the meaning of a literary text through the statistical textual analysis, correlation of words as part of speech under the limits of the structure of a literary text, including subject, action, and object components. Pearson correlation coefficient is used to establish ties between the most frequent words in corpora and correlated words in terms of part of speech categories. One of two corpora, possession or romance, will be used to illustrate the results of the study. The idea of textual analysis involving its structure is not new. It starts in structural linguistics, flourishing with a number of formal models. Linguists define literary text as a sequence of events or actions paid attention to a core structural element, an action expressed by verbs. They argue that action is always connected to the one who does it, a doer of subject expressed by proper nouns or pronouns. Then the action is directed on an object and may be described and evaluated. Such theoretical background gives rise to the following structure of a literary text, so-called SAO structure, including subject, action, and object components. Nowadays, quantitative data analysis available in computer processing make it possible to evaluate objectively meaningful components of textual structure, which reveal the meaning of a literary text in connection to the parts of speech. The aim of the article in terms of literary text analysis and applied linguistics is twofold. First, to establish Pearson correlation coefficient between frequent words in corpora and correlated words using one tool web browser. Second, to define weighted correlated parts of speech categories based on their quantity. The meaning of a literary text is a multidimensional and complex phenomenon. The properties of a literary text include macrosemantic structures which mapped onto CFA structures through part of speech, nouns, verbs, adverbs, and adjectives. General meaningful sentence structure depicts a subject actor performing an activity that affects another entity object and uses this construction to depict actions events. One emphasizes the significance of triple structure. There is a subject, the protagonist or main character, an action, what the subject does, and an object, what the action is directed towards and may be completed by evaluation and description. The central role of verbs is acknowledged by the fact that literary texts are a particular kind of action discourse. That is, a discourse which is interpreted as a sequence of actions denoted by verbs and their properties. The verb having a radiative power is the center of much of the semantic and grammatical information in the clause. The verb is like a node or a link, and other words, part of speech, are supposed to be connected to it. Being a necessary element to build a meaningful statement, a verb is a node of a sentence or a group of words. From a semantic point of view, a verb expresses an action made or undergone, in other words, a change of state from A to B. The significance of noun or pronouns is expressed by subject who performs an action and object. Proper names in the literary text play the role of markers of time and space. Without them, the reader loses a sense of certainty in time and space of textual fabric. Proper names contain several types of information. Their value is formed as correlation with the object, and in other words, the value of a proper name is identical to established information about the object. Proper names also have the property of a particular reference as well as a massive number of connotations. Adjectives alter, clarify, or adjust the meaning contributions of nouns. They can plainly align with nouns, forming complex constituents and linking with other elements to form a noun phrase. At a general level, adjectives gain this capability in virtue of two main characteristics, one of which is semantic and the other is structural. On the semantic side, they suggest properties. On the SAO structure side, they are able to function as elevation and description and may tie up with nouns. The result of this combination is a new property, thereby providing a finer shade of meaning of a literary text that is not possible using the noun alone. Two methods were employed to the present study. The first is quantitative textual analysis to define word frequency using Voint web browser. The second is the study of Pearson correlation coefficient generated by Voint tool in terms of part of speech related to SAO structure. Pearson correlation coefficient is a measure of linear correlation between two sets of data. It's the ratio between the covariance of two variables and the product of their standard deviations. It is measurement of the covariance. The coefficient always has a value between -1 and 1. The analysis of Pearson correlation coefficient starts with the analysis of word frequency. The most frequent words in corpus possession romance are said, like, know, mod, ash, think, thought, little, roll, and time. So further we group frequent words according to parts of speech categories: verb, proper nouns, common nouns, and adjectives, adverbs. The diagram shows the most frequent proper nouns, figure 1. Verbs, figure 2, common nouns and adjectives, figure 3, in textual segments. The diagrams, including relative frequencies, demonstrate that verbs are distributed evenly in textual fragments, except verb no. It proves the verb's importance in providing a SAO structure. The verbs form a kind of an action scheme, a balanced saturation of the literary text. On the contrary, the quantity of proper names is sharply different in each textual segment. The object time is presented in each textual fragment having approximately the same quantity, and the evaluation description little is the highest in the second textual fragment. Using Pearson correlation coefficient in corpus possession romance, we define the values of correlation and significance for frequent words in a corpus, 15 correlations for each word. The fragment of the table demonstrates the first column, which contains the frequent words, the second column shows the related words, the third includes values of correlations, and the fourth, the values of significance. Frequent words grouped as subject, action, object, evaluation, and correlate with all of the researched parts of speech categories: proper nouns, common nouns, verb, adjectives, and verbs. Each element of SAO structure draws or correlates with different quantity of part of speech categories. The highest figures of part of speech categories are concentrated in action, which attracts mostly nouns and verbs. Part of speech, which constitute object or evaluation, are not so numerous. To make the results more accurate, we depicted correlated part of speech categories as percentage. Figure 5 demonstrates that subject mostly correlates with proper nouns, action with common nouns, and verbs, object with verb, and evaluation with common nouns. Proper nouns and adjectives do not have high percentage, while correlating with subject, object, and evaluation or description. We see approximately the same quantity of correlated parts of speech categories in both corpora and the SAO structure. It means that the Pearson correlation coefficient does not characterize the author's style, but contributes to meaning, exposing in textual structure. The resulting picture is one that raises a number of noteworthy questions about the centrality of verb and nouns meaning in relation to action and subject in literary text under the scope of statistical textual analysis. Taken together, these results suggest that the Pearson correlation coefficient is a significant quantitative index in the study of the meaning of a literary text through the statistical correlation of words, which forms the basis for the semantic analysis of a literary text and the SAO structure. This research proves the idea that centrality of the verbs embodied in action and connected to object in a literary text in spite of the author's style. By carefully examining the data, it was found that the most frequent words in each corpus correlate with words as definite parts of speech, mostly with nouns and verbs, to a lesser extent with adjectives. Calculation of the Pearson correlation coefficient of the words in a literary text might be addressed in future studies involving both quantitative aspects, for example, Spearman correlation, and qualitative parameters of literary textual interpretation or cognitive modeling. Thank you for your attention.